welcome to the Cheat Code Corner podcast, where we hit you with the cheat codes to help you advance in the areas that you care about. I'm your host, DC, and today we have one of my special guests, my man, Todd Williamson, Senior Vice President at SKDK, which is a former Public Affairs Agency of the Year. He's been in international relations for quite some time with stops at JP Morgan. He was in Berlin Global Advisors for a while. Worked in the Obama administration as well as the U.S. House of Representatives. I am so amped about this conversation, man. Welcome.
Thanks for having me, man. This is, I'd say, a long time coming. These are some of the early days of this program, but I know that you've been talking about this for some time, and I think this is a really good opportunity to reach out to folks who's trying to figure out how to get from point A to point B.
100%, man. And it's, I know you're busy. I know there's a lot of things going on, so I appreciate you carving out some time for us to talk today. And part of the reason, Todd, why I wanted you on the podcast, when I think about some of the network of folks that I have, I've been very blessed to just have people that have made their way through and have advanced pretty far, but have still been able to maintain a level of authenticity. They still know what's kind of going on. And I think being able to articulate that to, I don't want to say younger generation, but younger age group of folks and being able to help them understand the things to do, I think that is just really powerful. And I didn't have that. I know a lot of people, there was no Google when we was coming up necessarily.
No, absolutely. And another thing that I think is different for us is that there was such a more uniform, structural, traditional way of doing things. Like the suit and tie dynamic within corporate America that was the norm. We were coming up and you were just trying to climb that ladder.
Yep.
Now I think this next group of professionals coming up now, they can create their own channels and their own lanes. It's not an anomaly as much anymore.
Yeah.
Their creative juices are allowed to flow a little bit better. Look, you still have some of these traditional spaces and places, and it's very hierarchical.
Yeah.
But even they have to adapt to this next generation or they're going to get left behind.
100%.
These companies have been around for centuries. And so I think working with that, but still you got to have the drive.
Got to have the drive. But you got to tell me something, though, because I remember even just, over the years when we've kind of chopped it up and I've been listening to kind of what you do, I actually never really understood, how do you get into government relations, then you parlay that into international government? Like, how does that where do you even start?
Yeah. There is no one place to start, honestly. Like, there's additional things, right? Like, you could do the track that everyone says. You can go to the Georgetown School of Foreign Service. You can go to Johns Hopkins, and you can go to Columbia's SEPA or the Maxwell School at Syracuse. You can go to the right school, right? You can go to Princeton has a school of international public affairs or administration. You could do the traditional thing, but there's not always one through line, right? Like, I went to Hampton for journalism. I wanted to be on ESPN. I wanted to be the next Stuart Scott. I just wanted to say,
yeah.
All that. I was a 90s kid, Jordan and Pippen and all the Emmitt Smith and sports and stuff. But, a lot of the things that I learned, basic things like writing, editing, how to present, not just, let's say for print, but for broadcast and radio, it's helped carry me throughout every step of the way. So there really is no one through line for me. When I was at Hampton, then I saw that program at Georgetown, the CCT, Communication, Culture, and Technology, concentration area of media and politics. So I interned for John Lewis after my freshman year at Hampton, which was a blessing. To be that close to someone who risked their lives so you have the opportunity to vote or just exist within spaces, that was earth-shattering for me. In the 2004 elections hit, and I remember how much our campus was really into it, very into Kerry Edwards. This is Bush running for re-election. War in Iraq was going on with people we knew our age that were going over to fight the war that we didn't really understand.
Right.
And so that was a really politically active time. So going from sports to politics was the thing. Then when I actually got to Georgetown, where I was amazed at Hampton, where people were from, Miami and Chicago and Philly and Cali and stuff, in New York. When I got to Georgetown, folks were from South Africa and Peru and Japan. And it's really opened up my eyes to the broader world. I was like, I want to get into that. How do I get into that? And by the time I was already, in the master's program, I wasn't in the School of Foreign Service. And it was hard, man. Like, because being Black, unless you come in there speaking multiple languages, you're going to be pigeonholed.
Yeah.
You're gonna be given, and there's no offense to the folks who work in these spaces, but if you're working in policy, you're gonna get that education portfolio, that civil rights portfolio, social justice. And even when you want that, they'll say, this is maybe the old ways, and maybe it's easier now, but back in those days it was, well, this is where you earn your dues. Well, you earn your dues the next 20 years by that logic.
Right.
So I had to keep fighting for it and find those moments and find that opportunity. And when the switch really happened, I went to JP Morgan. And even before I got to JP Morgan, this is like the intro, the little informational interview you do with HR.
Yeah.
I told the dude, I said, look, I know y'all have an international government relations team over there. And the thing I was applying for, I was a candidate for, was the federal government relations team. He said, let's walk before you can start running. The federal team, if you do really well on the federal team, let's see. So after 2 years in the federal team, I really built up enough capital and the relationships in the company. And I came back I built a good relationship with the head of our department. And I said, hey, there's an opening on the international government relations team now. It's in New York. It'll be a transfer. I think I'd be a good asset to that team.
Yeah.
I was able to get the inside track on that. And that's how I eventually got there.
Okay. So is it safe to assume then, once you kind of got into this world, you knew international relations, or that was the zone you wanted to be on, but you saw the track and you said, I'm going to have to go. It's going to be a unique track that I'm going to have to take.
Yeah, that'd be a unique path. But also, what is international relations? What is international affairs? It's so broad. So you have to find a lane in it. And mine it started like little moments. When I got to the Hill, I knew I wasn't going to be a press assistant because the congressman I was working for, all the press and media stuff was being run out of his district back home in Georgia. I was in the office. We had a colleague leave, and she was leaving behind the financial services portfolio. Education came with it too, and the budget for financial services. And she recommended me to take her role. And when I did, what I did not know was that 2 to 3 months later, the financial crisis would happen.
Yeah.
He was focused on war on terror and trying to hold the Bush administration accountable. Everything, and that member of Congress specifically was focused on that. He had me focused on the financial crisis and things that in banking and all these things. That was my portfolio. That was a sleepy portfolio, mainly about housing.
Yeah.
The Secretary of Treasury said this. The chairman of the Fed chair said this. They're trying to pass TARP. How should I vote on this? So I had to really, and I'm 24 years old, so I had to really read up on this stuff. I knew what quantitative easing was. That was my lane. And so I started using financial services, JP Morgan, as a way to get to that path. When I got to Berlin, I started making that also part of the political economy, became my lane within international affairs. And when I got to the Bosch Fellowship, I saw other people doing the same thing. A colleague of mine, she's now a diplomat. Her lane was energy. She was from Texas, right? Harvard in international affairs. She really knew energy and had a portfolio in energy. And then what does global energy policy look like?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I swear, man, truth is truth no matter who you're speaking to and things. So I was speaking to a friend of mine who's in Hollywood, this guy named Tariq Lowe, and he does movies, voiceovers, and a few other things. And the interesting thing that he said was that he had to carve out his lane in commercials and voiceovers before he got other opportunities. He had to demonstrate value and credibility in a particular lane, which gave him the credibility and the I don't want to say political clout, but he was able to get his agents to be like, yeah, okay, put me on with these other with movies and other things like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
he's on a movie set, right? And we talked about that with him before, and that's the truth. And I think that one of the things we didn't have, but one of is social media, and that's for the good, and I don't want to say the bad, but kind of the downside. The downside of it is we didn't have access to social media, so we didn't have access to information as quickly, right? We didn't have our own lanes to really carve out as easily. But I think that social media in certain circles tends to make us believe that it's almost like an inflated sense of success by other people's stuff.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
A lot of times we don't see the grind. Like,
see the grind.
And it's like the highlights, the greatest hits of people's lives.
Right.
Some of that stuff might be fallacy. Some of it might be, yes, it is actual truth, but we don't see the day-to-day grind, the effort and the commitment and the sacrifices those folks had to make, to be on that boat in Italy, chilling, work hard for that, right?
For a while too. That's what's crazy. I mean, like when I look at the stops at the U.S. House of Representatives, had to stop at USDA. 4-something years in J.P. Morgan and Chase. Then you got the fellowship in Berlin. I mean, we're talking about hard grinding until you reach this point. And I don't think you're right. Like people don't see it, people don't understand, and then they just think magically I end up as the senior vice president, the only person of color at my firm to do it magically. You think that that's what happens?
I mean, I had hair when I started this journey, brother. So, like I say, like it is. Look, sometimes it can come quickly, but when we look at people, you look at somebody like Chance the Rapper. Like, how many times did he have to figure this thing out, right? When he was first starting out in the grind and going independent, and it makes and he got started early, right? Or you look at somebody like Diddy, we see the shiny suits and the fireworks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But a lot of doors that were closed in his face. There was a lot of, we weren't on that bus or that train from Howard up to New York where he was interning for Uptown, both going to school and interning for one of the, largest or the most up and coming New Jack Swing record labels, right? Yeah. Like working for interning for Andre Harrell, and Andre Harrell sending him on all these random errands all throughout New York and stuff like that, back and forth, or Master selling tapes out of the back of his car.
So did Ludacris too. Ludacris was like, yo, I already sold 100,000 tapes already. You know what I'm saying? At the time. Like,
this Chris Lover on a radio station in Atlanta, right? Like, and while he was going to school. And so, it's that. We see the end result.
Yeah.
And I think that's also a thing. And also we need to have, within our community, I noticed we need to have better mentorship. I know President Obama made this a thing with his My Brother's Keepers initiative and things like that. But there tends to be a tendency, because we're it's something Kamala Harris said, I may be the first Black vice president, but I'm not going to be the last.
Yeah.
I'm the first Asian American vice president, but I'm not going to be the last. Right. I think having that mentality is something that we also have to do more of. Once we're in there, how do we pull others into it? Put them on some game, but also learn from this generation that's coming up, because they're on it. They know a lot of stuff, and they're seeing this stuff changing in real time, and they can school some of us who are a little bit more seasoned in necessarily in the profession, but they're more quick on the tap.
Responsive. They're like the startup generation, and kind of like they are super responsive, and they have a good amount of resilience. And I think it's interesting because if you're trying to grind and reach, like, so I would imagine, I'm hoping that the two listeners that I do have that are watching the program, what have you, like they're hungry, they want to grind, right? But maybe they don't know exactly what particular steps they need to take to jump to the next level. So I love the fact that you mentioned, look, man, like carve out a niche within that and get a lot of understanding and deep expertise within that, because that's going to put you in a position, you know what I mean, to then springboard off into really wherever you want to go. I love that. I think that's, and again, I've heard that from a couple other friends, particular cheat codes, right? I would love to know, in your journey of kind of reaching this point, what are some of the other challenges that maybe you identify? Like one of the things you said was, look, man, like the path that I was about to take was going to be slightly different, right? What are like some of the other challenges that you encountered, besides also being probably one or two persons of color? And
you just got to navigate those, navigate a workplace environment where not everybody's for you. It can be folks who will do certain things that are like, it's not, some of it might not be intentional. It might be nature. It might be just there, like just the idea that you might be competition. Some folks might proactively try to sabotage your situation?
Mm.
How do you navigate that? Do you build allies within that space, to help kind of provide that?
Well, how did you do that then? I mean, tell me, and you've been in a few different stops, so we don't have to go through every single one, but like, how did you navigate some of the more precarious or situations where you're like, these people are not, they are not, I do not have friends here.
Yeah.
These people are not want me to win. Like, how'd you do that?
I think there's a difference between like friends versus a support system or allies. There's like friends and there's allies, right? I probably got 5 friends in my entire life. And when I say friends, not people that, if I'm in the worst, lowest state, they are like, it's muscle memory that they will be there to support. But like, I think aligning allies, and a lot of that is almost like in politics where I can think of a corporate space where I use some of the political tactics, right? So you're on multiple projects, building relationships within those projects.
Okay.
I'll give an example. At JP Morgan, we used to do these fly-ins where we would have, chairmen from the different states, or we would have bank branch managers from different states and come in and talk to members of Congress from their state.
Okay, yeah.
Themselves up as a resource. So when you manage that program, you go to dinner with them before, you get to know them, you get to know about their families. So this is like the Oklahoma chairman for Chase Bank, right?
Yeah.
Like that. And in return, those members of Congress, when they go back to their districts, you might set up a meeting with that chairman or something. You go to that state too. And you get to meet the people this isn't the Wall Street folks. These are the folks who, are processing and managing the ATMs and the checks, and accounts payable departments and stuff like that. You go and you shake their hands, you go take some time to talk to them. Right. And it was 2 years I was in that space where I was doing the civic engagement stuff, building those relationships with my counterparts on the state government relations team. So when I did make that jump to international, for example, and let's say there were some folks maybe who did not have always my best interest in that space, proactively doing some things.
Yeah.
Relationships I built with the state government relations team who could vouch for me.
Yeah. So did you? So what about, let me ask you a question. What if somebody says, and I think this makes a lot of sense, like formulating allies as friends, as allies, as, right? What about the person that says, I don't want to be fake, or not to say that there were fake relationships, but maybe somebody who's young says, I don't want to have to purposefully do that. Or like, I don't feel like what do you say to that person? You know what I mean? Who feels as though like they're not used to having to build relationships with purpose. Because it's different, right? You know the game, but maybe someone who's young doesn't understand that that's part of the process, I guess is what I'm saying.
I get it. I think that you have to look at it, take the focus off of yourself and figure out what if there's 2 of you. What if I don't think 2 of that individual person.
Yeah, I love that.
You're a Black person in a predominantly white space, and then they hire someone. You've been there a little bit longer than the other person, right? You're like, I don't trust anybody here. I don't know anybody here. I'm gonna be true to myself. I'm not gonna be fake and phony.
Right.
What if they hire a Latino colleague or a Black colleague, and you see them struggling? You just gonna let them die on the vine? They're looking for a relationship to build too. Yeah. So are you gonna keep it real and look out for people? And you start thinking, would I want someone doing that for me, and will I do that for them? So you have to have be a little bit less selfish.
Yep.
In that regard. But you also have to have an idea of what you want. Like if you want to just be there in this company, say I don't trust anybody, or in this space as an organization, I don't trust nobody. You can't be mad when other people are advancing and other people getting access to information that you're not.
That's it.
And so there's a reason why Chappelle said when keeping it real goes wrong.
Yeah.
Real all you want to, but then the folks who are building those relationships, I'm telling you, they're getting access to information and getting access to game and keys and gems or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
Because you're in your shell, because you want to keep it real and not be phony. It's not about being phony.
Right.
And it doesn't have to always be saying hey and hobnobbing. It could be just doing good work.
Right.
And they say, CC does good work. and I really like what he's doing. I want to bring him on this project with me.
Yeah.
Let me take him out to coffee and see what he wants to do. Like, so that's what I do with junior staff. It's not just on the way up, but also folks who report to you. I like to, before COVID, take them, let's go grab a coffee. And I would ask them, is there something you feel is a strength of yours in the skill set department that we're not putting you in a position to do enough? And how can I help you do more of that?
Yeah.
Driving with it, man. And that's what about building those relationships. I can keep it real and say I'm not going to mentor somebody, but then the team doesn't win either.
Yeah. I think, you know what I like too? I like that you provided the context of it's like, look, man, there's a lot of things that can come from building those relationships, whether you're helping other people, putting yourself in a better chance to win, or just growing in general. Yeah. It was kind of interesting. I was talking to a colleague of mine who he runs the APAC office in Singapore at my company, right? And I just like talking to people that have different, different backgrounds and things like that. They're building out the office out there. And me and him had a relationship, and I was like, oh, man, I always thought about moving to Singapore. I'd be interested. And he's like, well, we have an opening in 6 months. So if you want, you know what I mean? And I wasn't even trying to game him up. I didn't even know the position was going to open.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
But you had that relationship, right? But if you're talking to nobody, I'm just going, yada, yada, yada.
Yep.
Access to information, right?
Information. No, for sure. I love that, man. And I tell you, man, this is such a good example of a true cheat code in the sense of something that no one just ever told us. Everyone always says it's good to have relationships, but you never understood really what that means, how you do that. Okay, so this means then, you form relationships within your teams, other departments, seeing where you can be useful, helping people along the way. That's going to help you, man. That's going to help you. I feel like I started to get better at my job when I became a significantly better listener. And when I mean, and listening, active listening, which is slightly different than just normal listening. I mean, active listening is literally like paying attention, understanding, processing what they're saying, confirming you understand what they're saying, and then seeing, how you could be of value. Like that's an active skill. It's not just listening to every word that they say. It's a little bit more effort to that. And with clients, what I found is I had closed this deal with this pharmaceutical company not too long ago. And I was able to expand to 5 different divisions because I found out that this one woman who was there was the plug to 3 other different business units. And you would never know that from her title. There was just no way, you know what I mean? There was no way to gain access to the other divisions without going through her. And just through a call, I was just asking her how her day was going. And she's like, oh, just busy. And I was like, oh, what happened? She's like, oh, these product managers need these things and I'm not really sure what to do. And I'm like, oh, I could have a call with them. I could take that off of your plate. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? To help, I wasn't getting paid to do that. I was just, offering additional value through active listening. And and then it ended up helping me. So what's good for clients or good, you know what I mean, is going to be good for you in the end.
Oh, absolutely. Because those clients go talk to management and stuff, or those clients will really, it's not even talking to management. Those clients will re-up those contracts.
Right. And that's what it's about.
Yeah. Those clients will re-up and renew those contracts. And sometimes they might even come at a higher retainer or hourly, rate. You can do that because they'll want you all to continue on. That's where you really show that kind of value. That's some networking right there.
Yeah.
So, the money. Yeah, that's all. That's the networking of all, really.
Tell me about that fellowship that you got in Berlin. Was that all kind of part of the master plan to add, you know what I mean? Or how, because that's not easy. So let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah. So the Robert Bosch Corporation, they have a foundation, which is actually the bulk of their company. It's called the Stiftung. And since 1984, I believe, they have been sponsoring 15 to 20 Americans to come over to Germany to work in German institutions. It can be public, private, nonprofit, whatever the case may be. And they used to get folks straight out of grad school. But a couple of cohorts before me, I was Bosch 32, so I was the 32nd class. They've been doing it for 32 years. Maybe 500 to 600 people apply to this thing every year. And the only reason I stumbled on it was that my sister sent me, she knew I was always trying to live abroad. She was living abroad at the time in Luxembourg. And she said, Todd, you should apply to this thing. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And so, because I had the corporate and government experience, I always wanted to go to a think tank. because I wanted to get my ideas out there. I wanted to be published. I didn't want to just be a working hand in international affairs. I wanted my ideas to be. I want to have credibility.
Yeah,
Black man, I was like, that's going to be my space, because you don't see a lot of African Americans in this space.
I believe it.
I said,
that's actually, you know what, and this is on a more personal side, but I was always curious. Like, you're one of the most balanced people that I know, right? In the sense that you still you know what I mean? We still like hip hop. You still, you know what I mean? You still know what's good. But on the same side, international relations, speaking German, going around, like, how have, as people of color, as a man of color, how have you been able to maintain, I mean, you can call it authenticity, or just kept yourself grounded? How have you been able to do that? Through the circles, mind you, that you've been rolling in.
The core. My core group is like, one of the highlights of my time in Germany was writing a report on global trade, like I do on U.S., German, and global trade forecast with the former German ambassador to the U.S., Jürgen Krobach. Like, that's who I got to rub elbows with at work, or very former ambassador to France. Like, these are the people I was able to be around, right? Yeah. But I know when I go home, or not even go home, but if I'm texting, I still am on an Instagram or Instagram message, IG message chain with my 4x100 team from high school.
Right. Shout out 4x1.
Hey, remember when we used to do this and this and that? I got friends who that core that keeps me balanced, like my sister, and friends I've had since like second and third grade who I still talk to daily. And they applaud, my achievements or whatever perceived achievements, and I do the same for them. But they can always, it's just
they know.
It hasn't changed, man. I was looking at something on Allen Iverson, and he was just talking about like how, here's this guy, he goes off to Georgetown after he gets granted clemency from Governor Wilder in Virginia, and John Thompson, he goes to school like Georgetown, and he goes to the Philadelphia 76ers, and he's rookie of the year. He's getting all these accolades. And in the offseason, he's not out in Hollywood, with all these stars and stuff. He would go back to Hampton, Virginia, and hang out with his friends from Bethel High. Mm-hmm. And the NBA and all these people say, you need to get away from them. You need to get away from them. And he's like, wow, these are my people, right? Yeah. And not to say that that's, there's some like crowd or anything. It really is like my sister and like two or three of my friends from high school really going all the way to elementary school, who they just, I got awarded the Bosch Fellowship. That's what's up. You going to Auntie's cookout? They haven't changed up, and I haven't changed up. Like, and they would be the first ones to call me out, and they're like, yeah. And then do that. Like, you get to an age where you know to bring your authentic self into the room, and if that's not acceptable, then that ain't a room you should even be bothered in.
Yeah. I think
I
think you're right. I mean, I'm going to keep it 100 though, in the fact that I felt as though got these going on that I had to still be over-index on being super professional, over-index on keeping the specific type, taking the bass out the voice, right? You know what I'm saying? And being smiling more, dancing.
Yeah.
But I think, having that core, like I'm on group change and like I have brothers and things, having that, being able to have that, I think has to some degree, not just grounded, but this allowed you to, even if you have to put the suit and tie and everything like that, you can still come back and still be the same person you are. And I think, especially when you're climbing, I think that stuff is so important, because you're in rooms where no one looks like you 60 hours a week. You know what I mean? And that could be tough. Usually after we kind of cover a lot, I always like to have this section called like a power questions. It's basically 5 questions that's designed for us to kind of get a better understanding of and humanize Todd Williamson and what you do. So let's jump into them. 5 quick questions, and we want you to hit you with them. So number 1, how many hours of sleep do you get?
5, usually 6 if I'm lucky.
What's your diet like?
It's better. A lot of salad, spinach, less carbs than I had before.
Okay. Favorite activity to unwind?
listening to jazz on my record player.
I like that.
Yeah.
If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
To use a larger percentage of my brain power. 10% of our brain, I want to at least get like 50% of that.
Reminds me of what Bill Gates said when asked that question. He said, "Read faster."
I like that too. That can actually carry a long way. I didn't think it. Maybe that will come if I get 50% of the brain.
That's what I'm saying. That's what I thought. I'm like, yeah, like it's just an enhancement. And then the last thing, what are you reading or listening to lately?
I do two things. I listen to EU Confidential. Shout out to Christina Gonzalez, who was in the Bosch Fellowship with me. She's over in Brussels. She produces that podcast, and it really keeps me, engaged with the world. And also, what I'm reading, I'm actually revisiting W.B. Du Bois' Souls of Black Folk. I have it right here on the thing somewhere. Yeah. So I picked this. It's a quick read, but just like rereading it, whatever I missed. And also Black Reconstruction in America, which is another Du Bois book, which is two I'm reading at the moment.
All right, man. Listen, man, I so appreciate you stopping by the Cheat Code Corner, man. This has been I learned stuff about you I didn't even know. So I really appreciate you sharing, man, and being authentic. This was amazing.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It's a great opportunity.
Thank you, brother. Yo, what's good, fam? You got Damien at the Cheat Code Corner today. We're going to do a recap of Todd, Mr. International Relations, and kind of some of the cheat codes that he highlighted. He brought up two primary ones that I think are really important. He brought up that number one is like carve out a lane in your field or build deep expertise within it. He also talked about building allies in the workplace. These two are really incredibly important because they can apply to a lot of different things. So for the first one, where you're talking about carving out a lane, look, the reality is regardless of what field you're in or kind of what you want to do, carving a lane means just that. It means really kind of establishing a place and deep knowledge within a particular field or niche or expertise. And really what that does is you become the thought leader or somebody with a lot of credibility within that particular space. When you specialize in something, that does is that really allows you to really deepen the understanding of a specific subject. You can become an expert within that. And what you'll find is that people will go to you because, that guy, Damien's the guy that knows how to do this or that. And it's in a particular thing. One example I've seen is, there's always somebody that's good at Excel at an office, right? So someone always wants to go to them. Or, if you're an athlete that knows how to do particular moves, or look at Steph Curry, he knows how to do the deep ball, or just like Dame Dollar. Like, obviously they have a lot of different skills too, but when you have a specialty, people are known to have a specialty. And that could just be a lot of benefits when you kind of leverage that deep skill and knowledge there. The other thing is building allies within the workplace. Look, we all need people that can look out for us. Whenever you're in a workplace or an environment, the reality is that not everyone's going to be your friend. Not everyone's going to want to see you win. Building allies provides some air cover for that. In other words, when you build allies purposefully, building out good relationships with people and just like not having, negative, a lot of negative relationships and what have you, that can make you like popular, but that can also insulate you. So, when you build out relationships, you gain access to information, you get to understand kind of like the lowdown in terms of office politics and what have you, and understand how things go down. So you basically want to just make sure that you are becoming a good person within the office or whatever space you work in, people like you, and forging relationships that can really help you from the top bottom, as in from seniority all the way down to maybe someone that's kind of under you from a role perspective.